Welcome to the Goal Line Stand. Andrew Spaziano and Tom Condi here, talking some NFL. I hope you enjoyed the last couple podcasts we did, our open mic segment. We talked about some issues going on throughout the league, past and into the future. But now we're actually going to talk about some pending things going on in the league, and specifically free agency. So,
before we talk about free agency, I just got to say, Des caught it.
He did. He officially called it now because they announced they're going to change the catch rule about going to the ground.
It kills me. It kills me knowing that 3 years later, unanimously, the NFL competition committee says Des caught it. Not going to dwell on it. It's the past, but just want to throw it out there. Des caught it.
I know you need to get it off your chest, so I'm glad that you finally have some closure on this issue.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's
we could have went into Seattle because earlier that year we played Seattle in Seattle on Columbus Day weekend, and we beat Seattle.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was one of the big times where Seattle was like undefeated at home, blah blah blah. So yeah, it kind of stings knowing now that he really did catch it, but whatever.
My last thought on it is I've actually seen that replay in recent years, and I don't even think the ball actually hit the ground.
I will say, other than the GIFs or pictures that post up on Facebook or other social media, I have yet to watch any highlights, lowlights, however you want to describe, of that game.
I think I saw it. It was like I think they were talking about the catch rule on First Take, and I think they were showing that on a loop. And I was looking, and I was like, I don't think that ball ever hit the ground. So what are you gonna do?
Nothing.
Yep.
Can't do nothing. But I just wanted to get that off my chest.
No.
And I'm just glad that now, through tough spots like that, Calvin Johnson, even this past year with
Jesse
you guys
James
versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, at least now that the NFL competition committee can now look at these events and go, these should have been catches, these should have been drops, and now we can get clarification as fans, analysts, and viewers for the game.
Absolutely. So you're talking about changes in the rule book. There's going to be a lot of changes to personnel on a lot of different teams, and we got a lot to talk about. I think the first thing we should do is we should go over some of the big stories that have happened in the last couple of days in the league. So the first one is Blake Bortles got his extension. He got a 3-year, $54 million extension, 26.5 guaranteed. 66.5 are possible with some incentives built in. I don't know. What's your thoughts on it, Tom?
I personally like it. I like it for the fact that they're a really excellent defensive team, and they're going to want Blake Bortles to step up. Doug Marrone has already said he wants Blake to step up now and play the worth of that contract that they gave 3 years, $54 million. But now with them re-signing him, they can go after A-Rob, and they can keep some money in their back pocket for those draft picks down the road, so they can keep Leonard Fournette, Ramsey, so on that defensive side and offensive side, respectively. So I personally like the move.
Yeah, I don't have a big issue with it. I think my whole thing is that they gave themselves a reasonable window. They signed him for 3 years. As you pointed out, because they have so many young guys, that they have a favorable cap situation, so they can kind of afford to eat some of this money. And I like that they incentivized it a little bit. They gave him an incentive to get even more money, because 26.5 guaranteed is good money, don't get me wrong. And the 55 salary is good, but if you can get an extra 11, 12 mil performing at a high level, I mean, I think that's good that they built that in there. And it'll be interesting to see how he's able to perform with Allen Robinson back, and hopefully they can
if he's back.
That's true. We'll get to that later.
I know Doug Marrone has indicated that A-Rob won't be leaving the Jaguars, and don't forget, they can still franchise tag him now.
Yeah, and I think that's a possibility that they could do that. But talking about Bortles, I think if they can get him some more weapons, if they do get Robinson back, get him some more receivers, just more targets to throw to, because as much as you can get on his case for how he looked at certain points of last year, they were very thin at that position, especially when injuries set in.
Yeah, a playmaking pass catcher. Now I'm going to say pass catcher just because I have a particular tight end, if he makes the free agent market where, depending on the cap space for Jacksonville, a Jimmy Graham-esque tight end. Now, if they're able to have enough money for that on a short-term deal, if you're able to re-sign A-Rob for an outside, because he's one of the better deep threats in the NFL. Say what you want about him.
Yeah.
He's one of the best deep threat wide receivers in the league right now. He just happened to have a major injury. So you pair him up with a stud like Jimmy Graham to eat up those middle intermediate routes and down the seam. You can afford to keep young receivers on the outside other than Allen Robinson. You can have your 1, 2, 3 big punches in A-Rob, let's say, going along with this, Jimmy Graham with Leonard Fournette. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to go after him. I'm not trying to make a rumor or anything, but that's just my analysis, is that a big-time tight end like a Jimmy Graham, I think that would be profitable for the Jacksonville Jaguars to spend the money on that.
Yeah, I mean, they have 28.4 mil in cap room right now. Keeping in mind, Allen Robinson is unsigned. If they use the tag, that'll eat a good chunk of that. But there's ways they can move money around, and I agree with you. If they could get another target in there and get them into the offense properly, because they did have Julius Thomas, keep in mind, a few years ago, and that never really meshed. So, I mean, I think Jimmy Graham's a better player than Julius Thomas, don't get me wrong, but just that idea of, I mean, look what happened to Jimmy Graham in Seattle. He had all the talent in the world, but he was never really integrated well in that offense. So
no, they still go after him in the red zone, though.
Yeah, but it was just compared to what he did in New Orleans, it was kind of an awkward marriage.
Well, there's a huge difference between those two organizations.
Fair enough.
You have one pass-happy team with Drew Brees and the Saints versus Seattle Seahawks, who just run the rock. Well, used to. Sorry, they used at that time of the acquisition, and it kind of bit them in the ass later down the road, because what is the Seattle Seahawks' major need now? Offensive line, and that's who they traded away for him.
Yeah, they traded. They traded. It was Unger, right? And yeah. So no, definitely.
But to go back to Blake Bortles, Dave Caldwell is also on record saying that Blake Bortles is not a placeholder. So if they do get him these big target, big play guys, they're gonna expect him to produce. And if they got to the AFC Championship with the talent that they have now, you spend money on an Allen Robinson, big-time tight end, maybe another offensive lineman, they're going to expect the Super Bowl.
No, definitely. I think my last thought on Blake Bortles is I think a lot of his issue is mental. I think he has a lot of potential physically, skill-wise, but I think a lot of his issues are just in his head. I think as much as he says that the noise doesn't bother him, I mean, yeah, if you're kind of like an internet meme joke, like you're going to be frustrated in some way, and I think it showed at different points in the season, particularly in that Buffalo playoff game where he wasn't able to hit little dump routes. Like, that's not because he can't hit the dump routes, it's because in his head he's overanalyzing it. So I think if they can give him a better supporting cast, make him more comfortable as a passer, I think I think he could become a better quarterback in the league and more of a useful weapon in the league.
I will give him this. Once he got into the playoffs, he turned into a different quarterback in the way of he threw his body on the line. He was running the ball. What was it? One game he ran for more than
the Buffalo game.
Yeah, the Buffalo game. So it just goes where he wasn't going to be the reason they lost.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So good for Blake. Good for him getting that extension and getting paid. The other big story that came up just this week, it was really finalized, was the Marcus Peters deal. Sending him to the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams will get Peters in the 6th-round pick. The Chiefs get a 4th-round pick and a 2nd-rounder next year. So the whole thing with Peters is he's got a very cheap contract right now because it's a rookie deal, but he's not eligible for free agency until 2020, assuming that the Rams would pick up his 5th-year option next year.
Yeah, that's a big win. Huge win, rather, for the Los Angeles Rams. And I understand what they're trying to do. Tremaine Johnson is on the free agent kind of borderline. They have gone on record saying they want Tremaine Johnson back, but he's going to demand high money. So I do like it because they're going to get a corner who they know and who they like in Marcus Peters. where instead of risking a high draft pick, now they can grab offensive lineman, wide receiver in that first round.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And the Rams actually have a favorable cap position this year. They got $45 million freed up to spend on other players. Now, keeping in mind they're gonna have to pay Aaron Donald at some point. Todd Gurley will be coming up in a couple years. So there are people that are going to have to pay on that team. But I think at the moment, yeah, to your point, they have made it more economical to bolster their secondary. And whether or not they bring back Tremaine Johnson and LaMarcus Joyner, I mean,
that's a new contract is their biggest priority for him. Sorry to cut you off. LaMarcus Joyner.
Yeah. No, definitely. So they have the money to do that now. They have the flexibility. So, and they have a good core on both sides of the ball to begin with. So I think they're definitely in a favorable position. I think the curious part of this is the Chiefs. The Chiefs got a second-round pick next year, which isn't a bad asset to have. A fourth-rounder this year. Just, it seems like a curious move for a team that its biggest problem was their secondary. Now, they made that trade and got a cornerback from Washington when they made the Alex Smith trade, and it was kind of, in my mind, assumed that they were going to pair those guys side by side as their starting corner pair. Now you're sitting in a position where you have to acquire a corner one way or another, whether that's in the draft, whether that's in free agency, and they only have $18 million in cap space, so I don't know if you can really afford to throw money at Malcolm Butler or a Tremaine Johnson type.
It is a bit perplexing because I was thinking that same thing with two solid corners. But don't forget, even coming out of college, Marcus Peters had character issues. So we might not see what was going on backstage, or they might be very tight-lipped in that locker room. So something could have happened. I don't know. I'm not starting any rumors. But maybe something could have happened with Marcus Peters where they were like, you know what? We might as well get something than nothing.
Yeah, to your point, something I was going to bring up is you saw it on the field. He had that outburst against the Jets. He threw the penalty flag into the stands. I mean,
oh, that's right.
Yeah,
yes.
and he also had that fracas he got into against the Raiders on Thursday night. That whole like scrum where Marshawn Lynch got ejected. So he's had glimpses of some of those issues as a bit of a character on the field. Yeah, I mean, you never know what happens in the locker room behind the scenes, but I think you can point to that to a degree and say, yeah, Andy Reid doesn't want this kind of guy in his locker room or whatever. I mean, I think you can go back and say, why did you guys take him in the first place if you knew he had these character issues? Spent a first-round pick on him a couple years ago. So, I mean, I think there's a two-way street you can go with that.
Some organizations believe that they can fix characteristic issues. Some are easier than others, but maybe Kansas City just got fed up and was like, you know what? We just traded Smith. We're going to trade him out. We're going to go with the whole youthful movement. Yeah. Similar to what like Dallas is doing. They blew up their secondary.
Right.
Now they have a whole new secondary with Jordan Lewis, Cheeto Bay, Awuzie. Byron Jones actually is the only one that's been there for years as the starter. Jeff Heath, Xavier Woods. Maybe, this is just a guess, Kansas City might take that page out of their book. Yes, he's a solid contributor, just like Barry Church and Brandon Carr was for the Cowboys. You know what? Let's let him go. We're going to start afresh. We're going to start new. We got Fuller from Washington. Let's keep that ball rolling. So they might go with that youth movement.
Yeah, I think what they're probably thinking is that they're going to get Eric Berry back this year, and maybe they want to just kind of use him as a foundation piece and just kind of build around him in the secondary. Because to your point, yeah, I mean, Marcus Peters is a up-and-coming, very good corner talent, but I mean, it was clear, not that I blame him, but it was clear that he wasn't able to mask everything that was happening back there, especially with Berry out. So, I mean, I guess they're thinking that if we have our real foundation piece there in Berry, we can build around him. And my only concern with this method is the Chiefs don't have a first round pick because of the Mahomes trade last year. So they have a second, they have 2/3, so they do have some higher end assets, but they don't have the first round pick, so they won't be able to get necessarily a top corner prospect.
I haven't really dove into this draft class yet, but corner might be deep.
Yeah, I know there's a couple prospects off the top of my head, but like you, I haven't really gone too in depth. That's for another podcast.
Yeah, it's still in its infancy. I know they're starting the combine this week, so
yeah. So the last story, after talking about Marcus Peters, the last story that came up that I really want to talk about before we get into some of the other facets of free agency is Jarvis Landry got franchise tagged by the Dolphins, and I wasn't alone in being really perplexed by this move. So he hits them with $16.2 million as a cap hit. They are $8 million in the hole for cap space, so they need to shed some money. I understand they're thinking of, well, we want to get something for this asset. The thing is that Jarvis Landry now he's at the driver's seat with this trade. He gets to decide where he wants to go. And in turn, because he doesn't have to sign his tender, he can hold out. So in turn, what that does is if you're a team like, say, the Baltimore Ravens who's looking for a wide receiver, somebody who's expressed interest in him, or maybe the Chicago Bears, you can leverage the Dolphins and say, well, your guy, we have to sign him, we have to pay this tag. You can leverage the Dolphins now if you're another team.
don't forget this is a non-exclusive franchise tag.
Oh, so he can be matched.
But yes, by rule, that means Landry can negotiate with other teams and sign an offer sheet, which the Dolphins have the right to match. So this tag, this 16 mil, is just a placeholder. Now, if he was to sign the tender off the rip, he'd be entitled to the 16 mil.
And then the Dolphins would receive compensation for it, which I think is a pretty decent. I don't know the compensation. I want to say
I don't have the.
I think it's at least a second round pick.
Yeah, it's a formula that I don't have in front of me.
Yeah.
Just like the compensatory picks that teams get. It's a formula that they go by, whoever they are. I don't know.
Yeah.
NFL, the NFL gods, pixies.
Right. So, no, I mean that does change my opinion on it to a degree, because at least they are setting themselves up for compensation where they don't have to, where they're not going to get leveraged. It still is just kind of, they've been so blasé about their take on Jarvis Landry. They tried shopping him during the season. They've never seemed committed to him long term, and it was just kind of an out of right field move when this happened. I just didn't expect them to tag him because of.
Really? I did.
I didn't, just because of the number and the fact that they are in such a cap hell right now. So I understand what you're saying, that it's probably not going to count against him because he's probably going to go somewhere else one way or another. But
I don't know. All right, say Landry goes. Your top two receivers is Kenny Stills and Devontae Parker.
But how are you
with Ryan Tannehill coming back?
But how are you gonna pay this guy $16 million? They're $8 million in a hole, and I was looking through some of their, like, I think they can cut like Julius Thomas and net $4 million, stuff like that. But it's like they just have really bad contracts on that team. Ndamukong Suh is like a $26 million cap hit this year. I know that's an elite interior defensive lineman, but that's an insane number for a position that's not a quarterback.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, and
no,
you have your quote unquote franchise quarterback coming back. You want him to have weapons. You don't have Ajayi. You have Drake back there. But then when you look at the receivers, you have Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker as your number 1 and 2 if you don't have Landry. I would, me personally, I know they're in cap hell right now, but you have to. You have to give them that tag, even like they did with the non-exclusive tag, and now they can negotiate with other teams and sign an offer sheet, yada, yada. If he was to touch free agency as a non-exclusive anything, like a restricted free agent, teams would be knocking on his door. Teams would be lining up to at least talk to him.
No, absolutely. So I'm just looking at Miami's roster situation now when it comes to cap hits and whatnot. And I mean, like, yeah, you can cut Mike Pouncey and get $6 million. Do you
No
want to cut
way.
Mike?
No
You know what I
way.
mean? Do you want to cut Mike Pouncey? I
No.
mean, but these are the decisions. Julius Thomas, you net $4.5 million. I think that's a solid option. I'm just going through here, just looking at the list. I mean, they just have a lot.
Don't forget, for your cornerstones like Pouncey, I don't know how many years left, but you can extend contracts and
Yeah.
then you can actually make money on an extension.
No, that's true. I mean, there's ways to move money around. It's just they're just in a tough spot, and that's where I found it to be a really curious move that they did that. But to your point, there's a non-exclusive aspect to it, so I do like that part. I like that they haven't put all their eggs in the basket. They've kind of left it kind of fluid where they can get compensation, and they'd probably get more compensation with the whole tag situation than they would in a trade, because again, you're in that situation where he has to sign his tender and he can kind of control where he wants to go, which in turn will kind of diminish his value.
See, if he was to sign for that 16 mil, the only teams that would sign him are teams that are at least 40 under the cap,
Right.
because that's a big chunk right there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking Chicago. I mean, I've always felt like San Francisco would be a good destination for him, just with the young quarterback there and Garoppolo. And,
Cleveland, because they have buku money. But that's my point. If a team like, I'm sorry to keep bringing them up, but like Dallas, who has 26, maybe 30 million after they do their contract shenanigans, a team with 30 mil isn't going to spend 16 on
Right.
just a wide receiver. Even though he's an excellent receiver, and I would love to have him on my team, it's just 16 mil is just, whoosh.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, even Baltimore only has $7 million in cap, and
And he's been connected to Baltimore, too.
yeah, and I'm looking like there's ways for them to shed some money, but are they going to be able to shed the money to pay a guy $16 million? Like, I don't know. That's why it's not my job to figure it.
But
to
that's
figure
why
out.
I do like the non-exclusive, because now you can talk to his agent, be like, all right, well, we can offer you a 4-year deal that nets, let's say, 13 mil or 10 mil a year.
That's true, because he could sign it, then you can rip it up and then move money around. So there's ways around it. I don't know. Jarvis Landry is a very intriguing guy to me. I mean, he's a possession guy, a slot guy, but I think there's value for him. So I'm very, very interested to see how that all plays out for him.
He has 400 receptions through his first 4 seasons, and it's an NFL record. Guy catches everything.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, so if you get him with a young quarterback and a creative guy like Kyle Shanahan, I mean, I think he could really excel in a scheme like that. So moving on from the stories that are done, talking about a little bit of hypotheticals, but some likely hypotheticals here. Some top tag candidates for around the league. So the guy who I think is most likely to get tagged that hasn't yet is Le'Veon Bell with Pittsburgh, just because I don't think Pittsburgh really wants to throw the money at him with the workload he has as the premier running back there, and also being the receiver he is. I think they're very gun shy to do that, especially if they have a lot of money tied up elsewhere in a lot of other positions. So they I don't know if they really want to put that much money into a guy who's taking that much punishment. So I think they're probably going to tag him.
Yeah, I've been debating this personally, whether to sign him long term, franchise him, let him go to free agents. Listen, I understand he's the motor that makes the Steelers run. You can say what you want about Roethlisberger, say what you want about AB, but Le'Veon, when he touches the field, is arguably the best player on the field. Now he wants to get paid like that.
Understandably.
Which, number 1 running back, number 2 wide receiver money, which in my category would be what, 17, 18 mil?
Yeah, we're somewhere in that range.
Okay, so why not just franchise him, similar to what the Redskins did? Now, he was a late round pick, so his rookie contract was, what, 3-4 years?
Yeah, I think he was a second or third. So to your point, there was no option to it. It was probably like 4 years, and not insane money.
Now, in the NFL, the shortest shelf life for a player at that position is running back. Let's say 7 to 9 years.
Sure.
And this is his what, fourth year?
Yeah, it's his. I think it's his 5th year or maybe it's his 6th, because you got to think, if he was signed for 3 or 4 years, then he was franchised last year and he's franchised this year. I can look it up quick as well.
Well, to my point is that a solid running back, no matter how good you are, you tend to kind of curve off at the age of 28, 29, unless you're Adrian Peterson and you push it to 30, 31. If Pittsburgh franchises him this year and next year, it's not a bad investment.
Yeah, no, I've heard this talked about other places. And for the record, he's played 5 years. He's 26 years old. So, but to that point, if they franchise him next year, the hit goes up. Say it's like 18 million, something like that. But the thing is that he's gonna be. I think he turns 27 this year, so he'll be turning 28. 30 is usually that benchmark where running backs typically hit the wall and they fall off. So what Pittsburgh's saying is they can maximize the asset that they have without giving him the long-term deal he wants, where they could be in a favorable cap situation, and then they could so they get the production from him, and they don't have the long-term the long-term commitment. So my whole thing though with Le'Veon Bell is Pittsburgh does not have any cap room. They have $3 million in cap room. Bell's cap hit is going to be something like $14.5 million if he gets tagged. So they have moves they have to make, which I'm sure they will. It's just they have places that they need to improve on their team, and it's going to be really hard to do that. And I'm not saying you don't want Le'Veon Bell back, because Le'Veon Bell is arguably the most dynamic player in the league, so you want that guy back. But it's just like you have to think about the team as a whole and areas you need to improve as well.
I would still franchise him.
Yeah, so would I.
I would still do the kind of schemey situation that Pittsburgh is doing right now with franchise him, theoretically franchise him again next year. He'll be 28 going on to 29, and then you let him go into the free agent market at that point, where then he'll get overspent and he'll go to a team, the Browns, just saying, and he won't live up to that contract.
Yeah, he'll produce for a few years, but inevitably he's going to fall off. That's just the nature of the position.
Exactly. So it's not a bad idea by Pittsburgh. It sucks as a player to not have that long security that you want, but it is a business, and they're being very shrewd about it, and so I can give Pittsburgh credit for that. So yeah, to wrap up the point, I do think he's going to get franchised. That's definitely my opinion on it. So the next guy is somebody you're very familiar with, Tom. DeMarcus Lawrence over in Dallas, likely to be franchised there. Yes, they'll definitely franchise tag him. Another person that came up with Anthony Hitchens, but that's not going to happen because you don't want DeMarcus Lawrence to touch free agency. Pass rushers are coveted in the NFL, and if he was to hit the open market, they would unload the Brink trucks and they would just throw money at him like crazy.
You'd make absurd money.
Absurd is an understatement. Pass rushers just aren't many of them. Quality ones.
Yeah, elite ones. So you see people like Von Miller, Chandler Jones getting crazy money. So he's in that same ballpark of elite skill. So yeah, they have $18.6 million in cap space. It'd be about an $18 million hit. So I mean, there's ways to free up money, and
Dallas has more than 18 mil.
They have 18.6, but they have ways to free up money. Like I think Cole Beasley is. Yeah, they can save a couple mil on Cole Beasley. They can save just ways to cut corners. There's ways, as you've pointed out to me, like you're a big advocate for extending Dez Bryant and moving money around.
I am.
Just because people have talked about Dez being a cap casualty, you're gonna make $4.5 million if you do that. But if you move money around, you can free up a lot more, and you can move that contract, the money he's making around, so it's not as big of a hit, and you can go after other players.
Yeah, And like you said, this is gonna be potential franchise tag guys, and we can kind of knock him and say he's gonna be tagged, kind of just like Le'Veon, because Dallas isn't gonna let him.
Right.
Like Jerry Jones was looking for last year. He wants one of those war daddies, and DeMarcus Lawrence definitely heard that, and he stepped his game up. Just so happened it was his contract, yeah.
Yeah, right. Hey, that's never a bad time to
But
have
they're
a breakout
gonna,
year.
yeah, they're gonna meet with his agent and with Zach Martin's agent. Which, if they sign Zach Martin to a long-term deal, it helps because then you can have that money that you saved on him and put it towards a long contract towards DeMarcus Lawrence.
Yeah.
Either way, in 2018, when kickoff happens, DeMarcus Lawrence will be a Cowboy.
Yeah, I think to your point, I put the cap numbers down just to give you kind of a frame of reference, but I mean, they're going to figure it out. The Steelers are going to figure it out with Le'Veon Bell. Dallas is going to figure it out to keep DeMarcus Lawrence because, as you said, elite pass rushers don't hit the open market very often, so he'd make absurd amounts of money. So he's definitely going to be back. I agree with you there. Another guy that I think is a potential cap candidate is Allen Robinson for Jacksonville, somebody we mentioned earlier when we were talking about Blake Bortles. He would make $16 million on a cap hit, and Jacksonville was $28.5 million in space, so they can absorb it and have a little bit left over just without moving money around. So I think it's a solid option. As you were saying, talking about with Bortles, is that Allen Robinson is a very good talent. I don't know if I'd quite say elite talent. I think he has the potential to be an elite talent, but coming off the ACL, I think they'd be wise to bring him back kind of and use the franchise as a prove-it deal, even though he's going to be making that kind of money. Just because I think they need it on their offense to have somebody like that as a receiving threat.
Yeah, he's ultra talented. If you let him touch the free agent market, he would be the best wide receiver on that market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, between him and if Jarvis Landry, with a non-exclusive deal, but yeah, I mean, I think the only thing holding Robinson back is the knee issue because I think anytime you get somebody going off a knee, it's going to hurt their value. But I think, yeah, he'd still get decent money just because teams have money to spend. It's receiver-needy teams have money to spend, and he has that upside to be an elite talent.
Allen Robinson, Sam Watkins, and Jarvis Landry in the open market. Who do you take? You're the New England Patriots with Tom Brady at the helm.
If I was the Patriots, then I'd take Landry because of their scheme and he's be a good slot guy. But if I'm just looking at it from a equal ground from talent perspective, I might take Allen Robinson just because Allen Robinson has the ability to play outside and be a premier threat in different facets of the game. Jarvis Landry is great, but his game is short routes, which is fine, and there's value to that. But I think Robinson can do more than Landry can.
I'll agree with you there. Even for both as a Dallas Cowboy team and as just talent, I would pick Allen Robinson because you can line him up outside and in the slot where Jarvis Landry, he is on the shorter side for being a wide receiver. And Sammy Watkins, I don't know.
I'm not a fan of his, if I'm honest.
Sean McVay is an offensive guru, and even him couldn't make Sammy appear.
Yeah, it just never worked out there. But yeah, I mean, Sammy Watkins doesn't do anything for me. I'm sure when we're going over people hitting the market, we'll probably bring him up. But he doesn't. You know
what's
do it
crazy?
for me.
He was drafted before OBJ.
Yeah, the Bills traded a bunch to get that guy. I don't remember how many spots they moved up. They moved up a ton of spots for that guy. And that just shows you why Buffalo has been in the situation they've been in. But yeah, no, I think Robinson, if he doesn't get tagged, I think Jacksonville's going to do what they can to keep him. Just because, like you said, he'd command more money on the open market, and Jacksonville needs him. So I think he's definitely a viable option with a tag. The last guy that I listed, and a guy who I think is very likely just from a pragmatic standpoint, a money standpoint, is LaMarcus Joyner for the Rams would make $11.5 million on the franchise tag and they have $45 million in cap, so they can do that, not move any money around, and they have tons of money. And I think putting him back there with Peters, you want to keep the pieces that you have with Joyner, and then bring in some more talent, additional talent with Marcus Peters, and maybe even bring back Tremaine Johnson. There's still an option with that money left over.
Yeah, the Rams front office are saying that they're leaning toward tagging Joyner and letting Watkins go as a free agent.
Which I am a completely supportive candidate of. Like I said, I'm not a Watkins fan, so I'm very supportive of that.
Yeah, I agree with the move. If I had to pick between the two, I would pick my defensive safety over a wide receiver that really didn't produce much.
No, absolutely. And plus, elite safeties are not necessary. They're like elite pass rushers. They're not a dime a dozen. So
there's not many of them, and when they do hit the open market, they tend to get overpaid.
Yeah, so I think they're looking at it where, I mean, I don't even think $11.5 million I don't think is that bad of a hit. Like, I'm just thinking big picture with the cap. Like, I do that in a heartbeat. So
yeah, for quality safety, yeah.
Yeah, so those are the 4 guys I picked out. Before we transition, you got any other tag guys that you think are feasible or
for tag
possible?
Tag guys. I don't know. Seattle, they're tough. They got Jimmy Graham and Sheldon Richardson. They could tag. Jimmy Graham, he's an interesting guy because I could see him join New England. I can honestly see that.
Really?
I can, yeah. How much you guys have?
New England has somewhere around 20, and I think there's a way. Yeah, they have. Oh, New England has 14, but New England has an ability to get like balloon net 10, 15 mil. Like if they cut Dwayne Allen.
Well, maybe if he wants to play for chump change and play for a win.
Yeah.
But I could see something like New England going after that. But like Sheldon Richardson, that was a mid-season trade, so I don't understand that if you don't tag Sheldon Richardson. People like Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Bradford, I don't see Minnesota tagging any of them.
No. And they already said they're not going to tag Keenum. So, I mean, I think they're going to hedge their bets, I think. And actually, bringing up Minnesota transitions very well into what we're going to talk about, which is the quarterback carousel. And the quarterback market is very, very volatile this year. There's a lot of big names out there that I think it's abnormal, the amount of quarterback talent, like quality quarterback talent out there in the market. And Minnesota being one of those teams that's going to be in the market. For me, I see there's about 5 teams that are, I would define as quarterback needy. That's Denver, Minnesota, Arizona, the New York Jets, and the Browns. And looking at those teams, I think if you look at the cap discrepancy between them, I mean, you got teams with a lot of money. The Vikings have $54.7 million, which is incredible for the amount of talent they have. And that's because they have a lot of people on rookie deals. You've got Arizona and Denver with 24. The Jets have 84, and the Browns have $100 million. They have boatloads of money.
Yeah, Minnesota is my dark horse team, as a matter of fact, for Kirk Cousins. That's my dark horse team. I know a lot of people are pointing fingers to Denver, and that's good. But I honestly, if I'm Kirk, I want to go to Minnesota.
Well, Kirk has said he wants to play for a winner, and Minnesota's a very viable candidate. I think Denver's another one. Denver has $24 million, but if they get rid of Aqib Talib, that's another 11. So that's 30 some odd million. You got to think Cousins is probably going to fetch somewhere in the mid-20s, $30 million range. According to Spotrac.com, which is what I use to keep track of all the cap stuff, they have his estimated value at around $25.5 million. So ballpark that, $25-30 million. I mean, Denver could afford him. They'd have no room for anyone else. So, yeah, I think Minnesota would make more sense just from a practical standpoint. And the Jets have said they'd guarantee his entire contract. So I think that's the only way I think he could go to the Jets is he sees that Brinks truck backing up.
I don't see him wanting to face Tom Brady twice a year.
Yeah.
I can barely see him wanting to face Aaron Rodgers twice a year, but besides that, I mean, I would want to face the teams in the NFC North rather than the AFC West.
Yeah, I mean, it's close because I think Chicago's going to be better. Detroit's a 500 team, and Green Bay's Green Bay.
Green Bay is the Green Bay Aaron Rodgers.
Exactly. So, I mean, you got to deal with him, like you said, twice a year. The West, you got to deal with the Chargers, who have a very talented roster and just can't seem to ever make the playoffs.
They have the Armageddon of defensive ends.
Oh, I know.
Bosa and Ingram.
And they have some talent in the secondary. Plus, you got to deal with Phillip Rivers on the other side of the ball, Keenan Allen. So they have a lot of talent. You got the Chiefs, who have some turnover at key positions, but I think they've still got a lot of talent, and they should still be in the mix. And the Raiders, I mean, the Raiders should have been a better team, and maybe John Gruden can tap that potential. So I'm not gonna put them in the basement or anything. I think so my point being is that I think it's close, but yeah, I mean, I guess I'd probably deal with the NFC North if I was Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. Other quarterbacks on that list, Drew Brees, he'll be going back to New Orleans. That's almost solidified there.
Yeah, I don't think there's much conversation. I think if they had been as poorly as everybody thought they were going to perform, if they'd gone 5-11, I think, yeah, maybe he would have left. But they have so much young talent there.
Mike Glennon was released.
He was. And I think he got paid $18 million to start 3 games. So my goal in life is to be Mike Glennon because, you know.
That's $6 million.
Yeah,
a game.
$6 million a game, man. I mean,
nice.
He has nothing to complain about over there. But yeah, I don't think Breeze is gonna leave. I think he likes it there. He likes Sean Payton. Again, talent up the wazoo. So I think he's gonna stay. You got AJ McCarron's an intriguing guy, just because I think there's some potential there, and he's never really been able to show it sitting behind Andy Dalton. I think Cleveland's a very probable landing spot for him because they were going to trade for him and they didn't get the paperwork in. So
at the trade deadline, yeah.
They obviously have interest. They have money up the ass. So they
to kind of curve this AJ McCarron real quick. I wouldn't be surprised if they did sign AJ McCarron. They have 2 picks in the top 10. 2 picks in the top 10 in this upcoming draft.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if they signed AJ if they did not draft a quarterback and they just drafted skill set guys.
Really?
Yes.
Because in my mind, what I would do is I would take somebody like Saquon Barkley, a running back, pair those 2 guys up, then draft a quarterback, and you can use McCarron as a bridge guy, and he could be an expensive bridge guy because you have so much freaking cap room. Like the money is like no object for this team right now. So. Yeah, I mean that would add a whole wrinkle to everything because that'd screw up everything with everybody saying all the quarterbacks where they're gonna go. If Cleveland didn't take a quarterback and just went with him, I mean that'd be ballsy given the situation they've been in with quarterbacks.
Let's say they get Barkley and then they get Chubbs to partner with Garrett on that defensive side.
Yeah,
and everyone knows what a running back, an excellent running back, can do for organization. Ezekiel Elliott, Dallas Cowboys, Leonard Fournette, and Jacksonville. Hunt in
Kansas
City. It's just Kamara and the Saints. Teams are seeing this, and it's a copycat league.
Yeah.
So if I'm the Browns, I'm really contemplating that. Yeah, shoot, even if you draft Calvin Ridley as well with Barkley. You sign McCarron, you have Josh Gordon, Calvin Ridley, Barkley. That offense is Njoku from the year before.
Yeah.
Defense is not as bad as people think.
No, they have a lot of talent on that defense. So I'm not one of those guys that hates on the Browns defense. I just think like you raise valid points. I'm thinking I think the football world would explode if they don't take a quarterback with one of those top 5 picks. Like that's so just a wild thought that they wouldn't. I mean, I expect them to, but no, it's an interesting thing to ponder.
just thinking, because they drafted Kaiser last year, and they have showed interest in McCarron. And what, you sign McCarron cheap? Well, cheap in the NFL world.
Yeah.
And I know they don't have to sign cheap, but if you do sign a quarterback on the cheap side, then you can spend more money on skill set and lineman guys.
Yeah, no, it's true. So I think, yeah, McCarron for me is a front runner for Cleveland. I mean, I just don't know where else. I mean, I feel like Arizona would be an interesting spot just because it would give him some weapons there to work with, but I just don't.
No, I see Arizona going after one of the 3 Minnesota quarterbacks.
Yeah, I see. For me, I have Case Keenum going to the Jets because the Jets have shown that they like veteran guys. They did it with McCown last year, and Keenum has more upside after what you saw last year. I don't think he's going to be able to replicate what he did last year going somewhere else.
No way.
I mean, that's unrealistic, but can he be a little better than Josh McCown? Yeah, sure. I can buy that. So I think if they do that and if they draft the quarterback, then you say another team, he's valued right now at about $21 million a year, Keenum. Whatever. Sign him for 2-3 years and, front load it.
21 mil?
Yeah.
Case Keenum, 21 mil?
Yeah.
No fucking way.
Nah, man, you got to think about.
No way.
He led a team to the NFC Championship. You and I are coming from a rational standpoint. Teams are not rational when it comes to quarterbacks. Somebody will pay him $20 million a year.
Oof.
I can almost guarantee that. People are crazy.
Well, I guess that's why the Jets are the Jets, if they were to do that.
But they have so much money where I could see that it's them signing him for like a 2-year deal or something, having him there as an insurance policy, and then taking a quarterback. Because I think the thing the Jets want to do is try to develop a quarterback, which they've just failed at doing the last 3 or 4 drafts. So if they could get a guy they really like and not be in a situation where they feel like they have to start him right away.
Oof, that's an expensive Band-Aid. That's all I'm saying.
But
That's an expensive Band-Aid.
but they have $90 million, so that's expensive.
But even with $90 million, you're not going to replicate the weapons that he had in Minnesota.
That's true.
The first half of the year, he had Dalvin Cook, and then he had the two-headed monster in Murray and McKinnon, and everyone knows about their receiving core and Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, let alone that top 3 defense. It's $90 million. That's good to spend, but you're not going to replicate what he had in Minnesota.
I think another interesting landing spot for Keenum would be Denver, just because your point, the weapons, you got 2 really good receivers there. I think there's a lot less pressure on him because, like in Minnesota, he has a good defense to fall back on. And
I would agree with that. I would like that, but if you're Denver, you'd have to get him at 15 to 18 mil.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, that's his estimated value. So I guess you can kind of slide that 5 mil either way. Just for conversation, for just the sake of argument.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that'd be an intriguing spot for him. I don't know. It all, like you said, it all depends on the money he commands. But those are the 2 that I would link him towards. The Jets being the front runner in my mind. My hot take from the quarterback market is I think Sam Bradford's going to be back in Minnesota. No, I'm sorry, not Sam Bradford. Teddy Bridgewater. I do.
I can see Arizona make a push for him.
I think Arizona. Yeah, I think they could give him a look. I think the thing with Bridgewater is because of his knee. I think because if you have a non-contact injury like that, you can go to teams and say, here's my medical records, my knee's okay. Minnesota's doctors rehabbed him. They know what his knee is. They know if it's like barely holding on and it's going to fall apart. They've given him the physical therapy. They know the ins and outs of it.
If they sign Cousins, does he go back? I don't see it going back.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see him getting that much money. I don't, because I think the market is loaded with potential prospects that you can pick up that have basically, besides Sam Bradford, he's the most damaged good out there. So I think there's better options to go with, the healthier options and safer options. So I think that hurts his value. So I don't think he's going to command as much money as he thinks.
Yeah, he is coming back from a no-contact major injury, and I understand that. but he still has youth on his side.
No, that's true.
And Arizona is not going to stand around and draft a quarterback or get stuck with Josh McCown. They're going to go after a quarterback. And I don't see Kirk Cousins going to Arizona, but I can see Teddy Bridgewater going over there.
What about Sam Bradford?
No.
Really?
Yeah, they just had to deal with Carson Palmer and all his injuries. I know Teddy Bridgewater's coming off a major injury, but that was, I want to say, his first big major injury. Sam Bradford is chronic. He's always getting hurt.
I guess you could amend that. You could say that one of those guys could be back in Minnesota, because I think having Bradford as an insurance policy, if he had to play 1 or 2 games, I think would be comforting for Minnesota. Because he's another guy, I mean, I don't know what he's going to command, because he's had, to your point, even more injury issues than Bridgewater has. Like, his knee just flared up on him after playing a game. Like, so what can that guy do for you? I mean, I don't know.
He played well that one game, though, too.
Well, yeah, but then his knee just decided that it wasn't going to have any of it. So, I don't know, man. I just think it's interesting. I think there's a lot of teams that are looking for bridge quarterbacks. Like, I think Josh McCown could go to Cleveland if they don't get McCarron or don't get McCarron at the price they want. But that would definitely imply that they'd have to draft a quarterback, which I think they're going to do. But at least, like you said, with McCarron, they can think about addressing other areas with one of those picks. So, I don't know. You have any final thoughts on the quarterback market? Because it's pretty crazy.
It's interesting.
This year.
It's led by Kirk Cousins, but a lot of the eyes are gonna be on Minnesota's quarterback situation, just because they could dictate the whole market.
Yeah, I think to build on what you're saying, I think it's Minnesota, and I also think, I mean, Cousins is gonna be the first shoe to fall. Everything's gonna fall in line after that, because that's the guy. Everybody's gonna pursue him heavily, and then once that happens, there's gonna be a mad scramble to get the rest of the guys. Because I feel, in my mind, I think McCarron. No, you know what? Keenum's probably the second most sought after guy, because McCarron's an unknown. Keenum is a journeyman guy, but again, people value being able to go to the playoffs like that. So I mean, I think he'll be the second most, and probably McCarron, Bridgewater, Bradford, etc. So everything's going to kind of fall in place after that. So we went over quarterbacks. What else is on tap for the market at other positions?
Touched on Sheldon Richardson. Sammy Watkins is a very interesting free agent to be, because he's only 24 years old, and he has the talent to be a number 1 receiver. But Sean McVay couldn't bring out his potential, so that's a free agent that I'm keeping my eye on. He's a very talented receiver in such a shallow positional pool for the free agent market. Kyle Fuller, he's another one. Some people are high on him after watching him lead the league in passes defended last year, according to Pro Football Focus. But 1 year? Do you spend that money on 1 year of success?
So let me bounce a question off of you. So, like you did with me with the wide receivers. So you got Tremaine Johnson, Malcolm Butler, and Kyle Fuller. If you're a cornerback needy team, who do you go after?
Tremaine.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I like Tremaine. He's tall, he's physical, and he just plays excellent. And especially in that tough division.
Yeah, you're dealing with Larry Fitzgerald every year. You're dealing with guys like that, Doug Baldwin. So you definitely see a sample that he's dealing with that is pretty good if you're trying to evaluate his potential.
Yeah, and $30.6 million over the last 2 years for him, though, Tremaine Johnson.
Yeah, so he's gonna try to break the bank. I mean, I could see. I can see the Jets have been linked to Malcolm Butler. They're really interested in him. I mean, don't get me wrong. I will be forever grateful for Malcolm Butler for winning the Patriots the Super Bowl, but I don't know, man. I think he's going to get paid a lot of money, and I don't know if he's going to be able to live up to it. I mean, I think he has the potential to be a really solid cornerback. I'd even wager a number 1. I wouldn't say he'd be an elite number 1, but I think he could be your main corner on the defense. I don't know if he can deal with that pressure, because you saw how he dealt with the pressure of being on a prove-it deal this year, and he didn't play that well. He's going to get a lot of money just because he's still valued as a top corner, but yeah, I mean, Tremaine Johnson's definitely my guy I'd go after.
People in free agency, average players get paid like superstars, and superstars get paid like legendary people. So it's the nature of the game. Another guy that was actually released today was Muhammad Wilkerson, and I'm a big fan of him. I know he has attitude problems that forced the Jets' hand, but old Bill Parcells had a saying. Well, actually, it's more of a theory. It's the planet theory. And there are only so many humans on the planet with Wilkerson's blend of size, length, and athleticism. So I think he's going to catch a big contract being out there. And he was only 2 years in to his mega contract of 5-year extension.
Yeah, I think the Jets just, like you said, the attitude issues, I just think they're trying to build a culture there, and I just don't think they want a guy like that having influence on young players. But yeah, I mean, I could see him going to someplace like Tampa. I mean, Tampa could not rush the freaking passer last year. They've got $75 million to deal with. I mean, the Colts are another one. I think the Colts could be in the market because they had Jabal Sheard, but I think they could use more people up front. So those are two teams with a lot of money to play with. Yeah, those would be my top two that would go after him, just because I think it makes sense and they have the collateral to do so.
Yeah, staying with the defensive side of the ball, you got, with safeties, you got Kenny Vaccaro, Eric Reed, and Morgan Burnett. And these are three safeties that kind of play close to the line of scrimmage, almost like your box safety, safety linebacker hybrids. I personally like all three of them. Kenny Vaccaro, he gets bit in his coverage sometimes. It's his weakness. But if you let him play right near the line of scrimmage, scraping and filling alleys, he's going to knock out the ball from the ball carrier.
Yeah. Yeah, you're looking at him more to kind of be like your coverage guy, maybe for like a unathletic tight end or something. But yeah, he's a run support dude primarily.
Yeah, and Eric Reed is the same way. I mean, the best out of those three, Eric Reed, Kenny Vaccaro, and Morgan Burnett, I would say Morgan Burnett is your best pass coverage safety. But he's nearing 30. Injuries are starting to add up for him. So it's kind of pick your poison.
I got to believe Green Bay is going to really try to bring him back because they've had so much turnover.
Morgan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see them bringing him
just
back.
because they've had so much turnover in the secondary. And they look what happened when Micah Hyde left last year. Micah Hyde was a Pro Bowler with Buffalo. And I don't think whether that's wise with you're saying age and injury and such, whether it's wise to give him the kind of money that they'll give him, potentially, I mean, it's debatable, but I just think from an optics standpoint, I don't think they want to make it to let defensive talent walk out the door like they did last year.
They need to spend money on the line, on both offense and defensive line.
Yeah. Yeah, and they only have $18 million cap to work with, so it's going to be tough for them to go after anybody with big names.
I know they were working on an extension with Aaron Rodgers, so that might help
move some money around.
Yeah.
I think if they're wise, I think they should move money around with Clay Matthews, or you got to think what's his value right now? I mean, if you cut him right now today or at the beginning of the league year, there's no dead cap. It's $10.5 million.
With no dead money?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, you have to think about it. He's 31 years old. I mean, you're almost at the point where you're paying this guy. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just saying, like that's.
He is a fan favorite, but the only reason I'm kind of balking. I mean, you have him. You cut him that $10 million. If you're gonna cut him, you have to go get. I'm gonna say Andrew Norwell. He's from the Panthers. The Panthers have a lot of capital tied up with Matt Khalil and Trey Turner.
Yeah.
So you want to protect Aaron Rodgers. I would start spending money on the line. If I'm gonna cut Clay, I'm gonna cut him so that it benefits Aaron Rodgers. And what better way to benefit Aaron Rodgers? Not with a receiver, but an offensive line to help protect him from getting injured again with that collarbone.
No, absolutely. So, you know what? I'm really hoping that Clay Matthews gets cut, just because then we're gonna look like the hot take crew over here. I don't know. It just makes a lot of sense.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan. I'm not big on cutting a player like Clay Matthews, but if I can get 10 mil in my pocket, flip it, and getting a stud, the number 8 ranked free agent, it's kind of, you got to give and get. So
Here's another one for you. Not to totally focus on the Packers, but if you cut Jordy Nelson, you get $7 million. You gotta think 31 years old, another guy.
yeah, but if you cut him, then you have to sign Randall Cobb.
They
You want Devontae Adams to be?
Well, they have Randall Cobb for this year.
I thought he was on his
No, he's a free agent next year.
Oh, okay.
Well, there's a potential out this year. They'd have $3 million in dead cap, but they net like $5 million. So I guess you can go. You can go. I guess one way or another. I mean, I like Jordy Nelson better than Randall Cobb, but
yeah,
I mean,
I'd keep Jordy because he's that outside receiver. Randall Cobb is more of that gadget receiver. Even though Ty Montgomery kind of turned into that running back role, Randall Cobb is undersized. You got to put him in the slot, put him in the backfield, put him at wing.
And plus, Rodgers and Nelson have really good chemistry. So
Yeah.
So I'm with you there. What are the names you got floating around over there?
Carlos Hyde, he's another one that pops up. There's weeks where he looks like a tackle breaking terror, but he might play good for 2 weeks, but then he disappears for 4 weeks. So it's interesting to see how much he gets paid or gets looked at. I mean, if I'm Frisco, I wouldn't mind signing him back 2-3 years. I mean, I know I just said that he disappears, but you got Jimmy G.
He could be a workhorse when he's healthy, and
He's an all 3 down back.
But the problem is, can he stay healthy? I mean, San Fran has the money to give him a pretty decent deal. That's both gives him a little bit of love, but also doesn't sink them. So yeah, I mean, I think Dion Lewis in my mind is probably one of the most sought after guys at running back, just because.
Who is?
Dion Lewis.
Yeah, he's the most effective per play back in the league.
Yeah, and I don't think New England's going to bring him back, because I just don't think New England values running backs in that way. They're always been a committee type of unit, so I think their mindset is they signed James White to be the pass catcher. Rex Burkhead's going to be floating around too, but I think you can bring him back at a cheaper price than Dion Lewis. So that's where I think they would go. And Lewis, I mean, he started out with the Colts on the practice squad. I think he could end up there again, because they're not going to bring Frank Gore back, and they have a deficiency at running back. So I could see him going there.
They like that young guy, Indianapolis. I forgot his name.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but his name also slips my mind.
They were starting to play him, give him more snaps over Gore towards the end of the year.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's definitely, like you said, they have young talent there, but they have a decent amount of cap room. So I think if you've got Marlon Mack is who you're thinking of.
Thank you.
So if you've got Mack and you've got Lewis, because Lewis you could kind of have those guys go 1-2. You can kind of switch it up, and because Lewis is still a good pass catcher. I mean, he's really a gadget player when you come down to it. I mean, do you want to pay a guy you're going to use as a gadget player as much money as he's going to command on the open market? I don't know. That's not me to judge, but
it all depends if there starts a bidding war.
Yeah. Doug Martin's going to be another guy who's going to be a free agent at running back.
Yeah, he's tough, though.
Yeah, I'm not. It's just the injuries.
It's injuries and then suspension. It's just.
Because I think Tampa's another team. I mean, they have a decent committee there at their running backs, but they could potentially look at the market and try to bring in an established guy, whether that's, Jonathan Stewart's a free agent. I'm not. Jonathan Stewart's old. He injury prone. Definitely and he's definitely more of a banger kind of running back.
Between the tackles.
Yeah.
Get you those hard-earned runs.
But I think Tampa could be in the running back market. So one of these guys that we're talking about, obviously not Doug Martin because they let him go. I can see them going for it. It's just
Yeah, you make up a valid point.
yeah.
A guy that's intriguing is Terrell Pryor.
Yeah. I mean, I don't trust Washington when it comes to using personnel. It's just such a dysfunctional franchise, and I don't think he ever clicked with Kirk before he got hurt. So, yeah, I think I think Cleveland would like him back. He was very good with Cleveland. Put him opposite Josh Gordon, as you were saying, Njoku and whatnot.
Yeah.
Get a quarterback in there, whether that's a draft pick or a free agent. Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be a nice combination to have there.
Yeah, he never fit the Redskin mold, Terrell Pryor, which is surprising because he's got the athleticism and the physique to be a stud receiver, but mentally he's still a young player at that position. Don't forget, he's a quarterback turned wide receiver.
Yeah, so I mean, and he played some quarterback in the league too.
Yes.
So it wasn't like he just came out of college and played receiver. It was a professional transition. So yeah, that's a good point there too. So yeah, I think he's kind of a dark horse guy at wide receiver. We were talking about some of the bigger names. I think he's going to slip under the radar a bit just because of how everything in Washington went.
And for tight ends, I know we already touched upon Jimmy Graham, but we got Trey Burton, a very useful tight end in the Philadelphia Eagles' quest for a Super Bowl. He was blocked by Zach Ertz for playing time, but when he went down, he was highly upside as a tight end.
Yeah, he was kind of buried in their depth chart because you had Brent Selleck there as well. So it's kind of, and I know Selleck isn't necessarily as effective as he was earlier in his career, but still, I mean, you got to kind of compete for the playing time with him regardless. So yeah, he has the athletic tools to be a good talent.
Another tight end to keep an eye on, and he might go down as like the second or third tier free agents, but Tyler Eifert.
Yeah.
He's among the best tight ends in football when healthy, but he's only played a total of 24 games the last 4 years.
Yeah, well,
Hold on. 24 games in the last 4 years.
For those of you who are trying to do the math, that's a season and a half, and he's been in the league for 4 years?
4 years.
Yeah, so
That's just,
he hasn't even been on the field for half the time he could have been.
and that's crazy because he is ultra talented.
Yeah, he has the mold to be like Rob Gronkowski, but he has injury prone to the 10th degree. So yeah, he's definitely an interesting guy just because, like you said, it's rare that somebody with that skill set hits the open market. I mean, Jimmy Graham's hitting the open market, and Jimmy Graham is another athletic freak kind of guy. So the tight end market, to your point, is going to be very interesting this year. I haven't even really thought about it that much.
I mean, shoot, Austin Seferian-Jenkins is going to be a free agent as well, and he was lighting up the stat sheet in the second half of the season.
I think the Jets definitely should be trying to bring him back just because he really revamped his career there. He never fulfilled his potential in Tampa. Then he had off the field issues, and so the Jets brought him in. But yeah, he definitely was an integral part of their offense.
Speaking of off the field issues in the Jets, Robbie Anderson having, I think, a couple of felony charges against him not too long ago. So that's going to be if you're a Jets fan, that's a story to keep an eye on.
He's definitely getting suspended. I mean, it's just a question of it's going to be is it going to be 4, 6, 8 games? Who knows?
That sucks
for
the Jets. Because you just had a wide receiver. I want to say he went, 9 or 10 straight games with a touchdown, or over 100 yards.
Yeah, he was a very big surprise for them, and just looking at the Jets roster coming into the year, there was really nobody at that position that popped, and he was able to make something out of that situation. And it's a shame that he goes and gets in trouble like he did because he had so much upside, and now he's going to miss some time on the field. And, if you're the Jets, you got to think, I mean, you're going to bring in receivers anyways, but you got to think about big picture. Is this a guy with these kind of issues that we want to invest in going forward long term? So, yeah, no, definitely. That's
It's not the NFL offseason until someone gets in trouble with the law.
I really hope Robbie. Man, I really hope Robbie Anderson has like the biggest L of the year because he set the bar so high. I don't want to know. You'd have to like kill somebody to
Oof.
to go beyond what he did.
Let's not go there.
No.
There's a ex-Panther wide receiver on trial right now.
Well, I was gonna say I'm familiar.
For that.
Oh, I was gonna say I'm familiar all too well with New England being in that situation. So it's unfortunately unfortunately there's a precedent for that kind of thing.
I didn't put 2 and 2 together.
That's okay. We got time for a couple more. I don't know if there's anyone else you want to go over.
Yeah, I'm just going down the list of the 101 that are available, and Jerick McKinnon, going back to the running backs, he's expressed desire to go to a team where he's going to be the workhorse. He did show flashes of being an all-3 down back when Delvin Cook first got hurt because Murray was still recovering from an injury the year before, so they were asking a lot from Jerick McKinnon. And he's electrifying as a pass catcher. You get him on a sweep or a toss, open field. He's great. I'd say he's above average in between the tackles. He's above average.
Yeah.
Latavius Murray definitely took advantage of the opportunities of running between the tackles, where Jarrett was definitely your space guy.
Yeah, I would rather have him over somebody like Doug Martin or something, just because he has such an upside, as you said, as a 3-down back. So I think he's definitely a guy that I'm glad you brought up, because I think if I'm a GM and I'm looking for a running back, he's definitely a guy I'm looking for. I mean, I think he's, like you said, free agency. He's going to get overpaid, but I mean, there's overpaying for an average player, but I think the ceiling here is exceedingly high.
Even though Lewis is a Super Bowl winning running back, I could see him and Jarrett kind of getting the same type of contract.
The thing with Lewis is that he has an injury history, and he's also, I think he's like 29. So you got to think about, like, McKinnon's younger. As far as off the top of my head, he's been healthier. So you got to think it's going to be taken into account. So, yeah, McKinnon's definitely a guy.
One of the better linebackers in this free agency is Anthony Hitchens. Hitchens can play on the outside, and he can fill in at the middle linebacker. Keep an eye on the Colts for this one. His old position coach is now the defensive coordinator over there. That's a good fit for him. They're going to throw money at him.
And they need to bolster that defense. We've talked about how anemic their defense is, and they've got some areas where, you know, Jabal Shear had a good year. I think Malik Hooker, if he can stay healthy, has potential at safety. But yeah, they have to address the needs on that side of the ball.
You got another linebacker, a run-stuffing linebacker rather, in Zach Brown. He's talented. His early career was skyrocketed. He was excellent, and he's a premier run-stuffing inside linebacker. So if that's what you're looking for on defense, he's a good option to go with.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Defense. If you want to build defense, there's some good talent in this free agent draft class.
Yeah, I mean, I think my final thought just on the entire free agent period is I just think it always fascinates me how teams, because this is where you craft your team, this in the draft. So you have to think, if you're a rebuilding team like the Indianapolis Colts, the New York Jets, the Cleveland Browns, you have to think about what direction you want to go in. You have to, especially teams like the Colts, where they've gone through a new GM and they got a new head coach there in Frank Reich. You have to think about where do you want to go with your identity on both sides of the ball. So this is where it fascinates me, is trying to acquire those pieces to make that vision a possibility.
Yeah, see, it's a dangerous thing, because I would rather build through the draft and then use free agency as a supplement.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the league now is that it's possible to, like the Jacksonville model of paying people money in free agency but not being in total cap hell, because you can roll over some excess money from the previous year, which they've been notorious to do, and that's how they've supplemented a lot of this. So they've kind of set a bit of a market, not just for their on the field product, but also their team building. The Eagles are in a similar place where they got guys on rookie contracts and cheap deals, and they were able to succeed that way. So teams take note of that kind of thing. You said it's a parity league.
Speaking of the Eagles, Nigel Bradham, he's a run chase, sideline to sideline linebacker, limited to the 4-3 system. But he's coming off of a Super Bowl winning year, so that's another linebacker that could be supplemented into a team that is good drafting, but then they supplement it in the free agency with a player like Nigel and skyrocket to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and you see it all the time. A team that wins the Super Bowl, free agents there get crazy money. Logan Ryan got a big deal when he hit the market with Tennessee after the Patriots won. You saw a lot of guys from Denver's defense get big money when they freed up because of how vaunted that defense was. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting, and I'm looking forward to when we come back in a couple weeks and just kind of analyze things. Predicting is fun, but I like being able to deal with the concrete.
Concrete evidence is the best.
Yep, because I want to be able to criticize or praise moves that have actually happened, not the hypotheticals. So
yeah, the hypothetical, it's all good and fun today and whatnot, but I really can't wait until the combine's over with. We got the NFL New Year here, and everything is rolling. It's one of my more favorite times of the year.
Yeah, the league year
Kind of like Christmas.
Yeah. From a football standpoint, definitely. But yeah, the free agency period officially starts March 14th. Everything is official then. So,
but we all know about the legal tampering,
which is what, a few days beforehand.
Yeah. So that Monday, which would be what, the
11th.
Yeah. Oh, actually, you know what? NFL Network is already showing little montages of that Monday. The NFL free agency, who's going where. So the legal or illegal tampering is happening.
Oh, it's in full swing.
Now.
Oh,
yeah.
definitely.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to hear more news upon news as the time gets closer to the new year.
No, absolutely. So,
which, not to dive too far in, but I've never really understood that. You're not allowed to talk to a player who's under contract until the new year, and yet it's not the new year, but you're going to talk to this guy because he's a pending free agent.
Yeah, it's a really weird system. I think it's kind of to get the market flowing, because then it puts pressure on teams to pull the trigger and re-sign their guys. So it's an interesting system. It's kind of been refined through the last few years, but
yeah, I just never really understood that.
No, I mean, it adds more drama on our end. You know what I mean? It makes it more drama filled, which I enjoy.
Yeah, just real quick, Google defines it as the tampering period. It's a 48-hour stretch when teams and agents can legally negotiate for the first time, which it's just.
So you can legally do something illegal for 48 hours. It's basically like the NFL.
It's like
yeah, I was just going to say, it's like the purge in the NFL. No, definitely. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I mean, that's all I've got. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sitting through our hypotheticals and our analysis of free agency. But tune in for our next podcast. It'll be in a couple weeks. We're going to break down the real moves and the real goings on around the league. So from Tom and I, thanks for tuning in, and be sure to follow us, subscribe to us, so you can stay in the loop, because we'll be posting things throughout free agency even when we're not on the air. So thanks for tuning in.